Hey people, thank you for stopping by at Building Wealth with Rajiv. World is far more complicated than it used to be. Many of you would agree with me on that. And I decode all this with Dr. Tanvi. Dr. Tanvi is an award-winning keynote speaker. She's a gold standard in executive coaching. She works with world's leading organizations like Accenture, Coke, Mastercard, Microsoft, and many more. Dr. Tanvi gets very candid about the leaders of today. What are the opportunities? Where are the gaps? What are the goods? What are the bads? And she makes some very compelling points. I hope you like the chat. Please follow my channel for such meaningful discussions. Press on that bell icon so that you get notified as soon as I post something.
The age of the heroic leader who would swoop in like Superman and save the world, those days are done. Those days are done. Nobody, including myself, has the answer. The answer has got to be co-created. And that requires you to leave your ego out of the room. That requires you to show up in authenticity. And that requires you to say, with a sense of humility, I don't know what to do. I'm struggling. Storytelling for me is, it's a technology.
Okay.
Right? You have got C++ and Java and all that. Storytelling is a type of a technology.
Okay.
And what that technology can do for you is that once you have learned to code in storytelling, your ideas coded in storytelling can have a huge amount of impact. I tell people that storytelling is one of the highest return on investment activities you will ever undertake in your career. But I can't imagine that there was a time where we were putting profits before purpose in the workplace, because why do we even come to work? What is the meaning of work for all of us, right? So we are in that process of transition right now. It's going to take a while, but it is going to happen. And as I like to tell my clients, either you will go in willingly or you will go in kicking and screaming, but you will go in. So you decide which path you want to take. A leader expands the range of possibility and potential of everything and everyone they come in contact with. But they can't do that for others if they don't do that for themselves. And now more than ever, leaders have to realize that simply going by the left brain analytical tools of leading their people or their organizations are not going to make it anymore. They have to step into a more holistic approach on the way they approach transformation, the way they think about strategy, the way they think about execution. So fundamentally, that idea of expanding possibility and potential hasn't changed, but the approach with which you do it has shifted.
Like what does that mean?
So you see, I do a lot of work on something known as transformational intelligence.
Okay.
Which kind of goes beyond even the whole, you've heard of emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
But this is slightly different from that. Transformational intelligence consists of 5 types of skills that leaders need to have. And this is what I've been focusing a lot of my time on. They need to, first of all, understand this concept of, it's an acronym that I use, it's SHIFT. That's why the company is called Leadership. There are certain skills that you need to have as to show that transformational intelligence. The first is you need to be very good at strategic storytelling. We are looking for leaders who can create a vision of the future when we don't know what the future is, right? So how do you create that vision and carry people along with you?
Mm-hmm.
The second is about, human centricity. So from managing materials to managing attention and engagement, and making sure that everything that is happening around them starts from a human-centric approach. The third one is one of my favorite topics, which is the inner work of leadership. That is having that self-awareness, that self-leadership, that self-driven ability to expand your skill set and your mindset and your approach. The fourth one, which is a term that I launched during the pandemic based on my work with companies, is known as future fluidity. Future fluidity is a term that I use to help leaders get prepared to face the future, even if it does not meet your expectations. So, we can't predict the future, but the only thing we can do is be prepared for it. So how can we prepare for the unpredictable future? And finally is this concept of of teaming, which is different than teamwork. Teaming is about co-creation and collaboration across boundary lines. So I think that these skill set, and one could go into the details of each of them, and that could be a podcast in its own right. But they get to this idea of being able to transform yourself, to then transform your team, to then transform your organization, and then to transform the world that you live in. And that's going to become very important.
So I think, look, I kind of a firewall. I work, as I talk to you about Dr. Gautam, my day job, and I'm one of the senior leaders as well in the company. I face all the challenges. I want to go through a couple of them, which is close to my heart. The first one, creating a vision when there is no vision.
Yes.
Creating a vision when there you don't know. What is that? I mean, do you have any examples to talk about, or I mean, what do you suggest? I mean, is a concept with more relevant to a startup, which has a lot of leeway to go, or is it equally applicable to big corporate? I just need some bit of examples here, or a bit of more thinking.
Yeah, so I think crafting a vision for your future is as applicable to startups as it is to big corporates, as it is to leaders themselves. Like, what is your vision for yourself? It's all interconnected in some ways. And I think that when I work with organizations on crafting a vision for the future, the question that I ask for them is, what is the world that doesn't exist, but that you want to inhabit in the future? Let's start with that.
So that is a first principle thinking, isn't it?
Yes. So it goes back to fundamentals, because what happens with executives very often is that they get constrained by, oh, this is not possible because, or that will never happen because, or this is not something we can do as we don't have the resources or opportunities or whatever. So it's almost like you have to begin with constraint-free thinking. Yes, I know to translate that vision, you're going to look at the constraints and figure out ways of execution, but that's not the starting point. The starting point has to be a blank canvas. And the question, what is the world that does not exist today, but the one that you would want to inhabit? And once we start with that, then at least we have an aspirational, inspirational vision to move towards. And of course, we have to make sure there's reality contact. We're not talking about living in an airy fairy pie in the sky environment. But when we start with the big picture vision, then our ability to navigate the challenges along the way goes up, because we are being pulled by something far, far greater than ourselves.
Is it practical? Sorry, I mean, just my questions are what I feel, and I'll throw them on you.
Yeah. No, I think it's absolutely practical. I think what is not practical is just to start with the weeds and the Excel sheets and zero sense of inspiration, and everybody clocking in and clocking out, and kind of bumping up against each other because they are not feeling that sense of co-creation and engagement that can inspire you to do bigger things and better things. I think that you have to have the big picture vision and the detailed picture execution existing side by side. What I find in companies is they're very good at the execution, nitty-gritties, risk management thinking. There's very little of the big picture ecosystem. Where can we drive ourselves, our company, our ecosystem in the future? And that's what's going to differentiate companies that are going to last versus the companies that don't.
So I think, look, again, this is not part of what we discussed earlier. I just want to get an idea on anything which comes to your mind, any company which you think has been a victim of this or has been able to take advantage of these things. Look, I mean, I invest, and there are only a few % of companies which are multi-baggers, right? And the Apple is a different, the Tesla is a different. So do you have some companies in your mind or something which you look up to saying, look, this went up or this did well because of this thinking, and there is something which they fell down because
I think for me the gold standard is Unilever. I think the work that Paul Polman did in taking the company from being an FMCG and selling the soap and the oil to crafting a purpose-driven mission that looks at transforming the people and the planet is just incredible. And that's kind of inspiring a lot of other companies to look at shareholder value differently, since you talked about investing. And I think there is a huge shift coming in where even investors are starting to talk a lot more about things like sustainability, things like the purpose-driven workplace, etc. So I think we are still kind of in the early days. What worries me is that in the absence of frameworks that translate that big vision into action, that this can end up becoming a jargon-oriented exercise, and it can kind of go the same way as in some places I have seen diversity and inclusion go, which is that it's great to talk about, but what are you doing about it? The translation piece is still not there in many companies. I don't think you will meet any company that says, oh, we don't believe in sustainability, or we don't believe in purpose, or we don't believe in being human centric. But the translation piece of it, that's where they kind of go wrong.
Yeah. No, I think it's good you said Unilever. It's an account. It's something I live off Unilever. That's one of my bread and butter, and I spend about 5-6 hours every day thinking about Unilever. So that's good. But one thing, Dr. Tanvi, it hasn't. I'm not sure how well it has gone down with shareholders though. The whole thing of purpose over profit.
I don't think that people will have a choice very soon.
Okay.
More and more work is happening on evaluating companies' value on sustainability index and purpose in the workplace. You see, now this is kind of starting to channel a little bit of the academic in me, but the organizations and the ethos of leadership that we have inherited pre-pandemic is so strongly rooted in capitalism and factory shop floors that to get people to start thinking about, you tell me this, if we didn't have the pandemic, how many of us would be talking about a human-centric workplace in a committed manner the way we are talking about right now?
It has significantly changed.
It has changed. It has taken a shock to
the system. It has taken a leap.
Yeah, to wake up and say, this is not sustainable. This is not who we want to be. So if you go back to Maslow's hierarchy, companies are used to existing at the level of survival, shareholders, profits, etc. Moving them up to have conversations around purpose, sustainability, etc. It's not something that comes naturally to them. It's a process of evolution. And I do think that regulatory changes that are coming in along with the pandemic are the forces that are pushing companies to explore it. I don't think they're doing it because they've had a change of heart. That's not it. It is pressures of talent, it is pressure of market, it is regulations that are going to move companies along, which, I suppose in the end, I don't care what moved them along, as long as they keep moving along. And hopefully, once it becomes a part of the DNA, that we'll have a generation of leaders who will come in and say, I can't imagine that at a point in time we needed regulation to think about sustainability. Or I can't imagine that there was a time where we were putting profits before purpose in the workplace, because why do we even come to work? What is the meaning of work for all of us, right? So we are in that process of transition right now. It's going to take a while, but it is going to happen. And as I like to tell my clients, either you will go in willingly or you will go in kicking and screaming, but you will go in. So you decide which path you want to take.
That's amazing to hear, because I can tell you, though, being the father of 2 children, and Tanvi, you are also a proud mother. I hear a lot about sustainability. I hear a lot about less pollution, and the kind of companies they want to work for is very different from at least I started with. My motive was to survive, but their motive is surviving and thriving with a very different mindset. So I do agree with you. Now, business transformation is close to your heart. I just want to hear a business transformation story from you. You're a storyteller, Tanvi. Your course is sold out. And, tell me a business transformation story, some client where you approached, and how did you kind of go around advising on business transformation? Execution is another thing. I know people come into a room and 3 days they take something, but that's part of the process we are in. So I just want to hear something on that front.
So business transformation is a really big word. It's an umbrella term. There's so many things that go under it. Because business transformation, what's the big big thing about business transformation, is that you're trying to unlock value from your people, unlock value from your processes, unlock value from your technology. So when I talk about helping organizations with business transformation, it could require us to look at some of these different aspects of it. But when storytelling comes in, we want to think about, what is the story of our people, and that becomes a story about culture.
Okay.
It becomes about what is the story of our technology, and then it becomes a story about adoption of technology, right? Like just because you've built it doesn't mean they will come. Just because you've got the latest technology doesn't mean it will, move people to do what needs to be done, or think strategically, right? So storytelling in and of itself is marrying ideas with emotions. So you have an idea of business transformation, but for that idea to come alive, it needs to be infused with emotions, right? And human beings run on emotions more than they run on logic. We were talking about the whole intuition and the data-driven aspect of it, but the two can coexist. For a very long time, we have had this conversation about left brain leaders and right brain leaders, and I tell you know what? Actually, leaders have been leading with half a brain and no heart. And by half a brain, I mean only the left brain and no heart. And forget about the gut. The gut is nowhere even in the conversation.
It is going to come.
It is going to come.
It's going to come.
Because already we are seeing research on, three types of brains that we have. One is the intellectual brain, the cognitive part, which has been overemphasized, for decades and decades, to recognizing that action that is heart-driven has far greater commitment, not just compliance, right? And gut, that there are situations in which you have to go by your instincts. And sometimes the instincts will be right, sometimes they will be wrong, but why would you leave out that decision-making process when it is available to you? So anyway, so business transformation can take many forms, and storytelling supports it by taking the idea and adding emotion onto it. That's how the business transformation and the storytelling piece comes in. Talking of story of transformation, I think one of my favorite ones actually has been around the adoption of an IT system in an organization, where they were trying to push it, as the usual cases in organizations. This is the return on investment. This is the speed at which we will be able to work. But the system was large and clunky, and it was complicated. And for people to adopt it, there was almost this inner resistance about, this is too difficult. And this is the case because technologies keep changing. We have to, keep upskilling ourselves. And in that, we use the storytelling skills to talk not just about technology as an end in itself, but what it could do to realize the purpose of the organization, the purpose of the team, and the purpose of the individual. Once we integrated that, that's not to say that it became easier to adopt. It's just that the motivation and commitment to try and understand what this can do for us went up, right?
Okay.
So that's what I mean by marrying ideas with emotion, that just allows execution to be more powerfully driven and executed, because now you've got the head, the heart, and the hands, all three working together.
So I think another, just a practical perspective, business transformation, I think it sounds good. And, you rightly pointed out, this has many legs, legs of profits, legs of revenue. I mean, what do you want to transform? Systems and whatnot. I think is it happening at desired pace in the current world? I mean, our companies, I don't see companies are, able to do it that fast. There is an issue somewhere. I'm not sure what that issue is. You work with the companies. What do you think is the execution issues? I mean, we go into a room, plan, come back, and it's status quo in most of the time. What happens?
I think when you approach transformation from a superficial level, it's not sustainable, because it starts becoming a bit of a flavor of the day. Today we've tried this, tomorrow we've tried that. And I was working with a room of executives, and the complaint there was, just as we started moving in one particular direction, they came and shifted the strategy on us. And there is a fatigue almost in people, like, what is the plan? And that to me is and evidence that they have approached business transformation. They've probably gotten, nothing against consulting firms, but they've probably gotten a consulting firm. And this client that I was working with, they got a major transformation underway. Okay, they said, we don't want to work in silos, we want to work in a network. They changed the composition of who reports to whom and the reporting lines. This is going to have greater collaboration. Okay, so then what's the problem? Now, the problem is that they did not think about people's engagement with that structure. Yeah, it makes great sense. Reporting lines have shifted. Now supply chains will be working more seamlessly. Best practices will get exchanged faster, etc. And the analogy that I gave them was, I said, you have changed your hardware without changing the software, right? And you're running old software on the new hardware. It's not going to work. It's going to glitch.
It's going to go back.
It's going to go back. So what we did there was, I got all the 12 regional CEOs and the president in a room. And we said, we have to put, as they say, the proverbial fish on the table. What are the points of resistance? And we need to have a very open conversation on why this is not working for you. I mean, it's a beautiful plan, but why is it not working for you? And so much of what came up was, everybody believing intellectually that this is the right thing to do, but emotionally not feeling connected to the change, then becoming passive aggressive, then trying to subvert the system by doing their own little thing in their own little way, and complaining about how cumbersome this has become, versus coming together and saying, well, we have begun on this journey. Now, what is stopping us from making the most of it? And that requires some very open conversations. That requires a willingness on the part of the leaders to speak their mind and be willing to admit where they may have gone wrong, and what are some of the issues that are coming in the way of adoption. And one issue that can come in the way of adoption is the ego of the executives.
That is a big problem.
It's whose initiative was it? Was I consulted? Was I carried along? So there are two ways of doing change. Either you can take everybody together, it's a slow process, and then you arrive at the change together and you have a big change party, and guess what? Nobody has time for that right now. Or the other way to arrive at change is to make the change and then go through a recovery process. I find most organizations are in the make the change and go through the recovery process, but they don't give themselves time for the recovery process. It's like you've had a major surgery, and now you're expecting that you're going to run a marathon the next day. It's not going to happen. You have to have the people-oriented conversations. They have to see it to be it. If they don't see their leaders role modeling the new ways of being, the new ways of working as a fundamental shift, it's not going to be sustainable. And that's when it feels like, oh, it's another change initiative. I don't know where it's going to go. Right. Yeah. So that's a very long answer, but I think we have to go beyond the superficial if we want business transformation to take root.
I get it. And I think one of the problems, Dr. Gautam, I feel is that the company's HRs, human resources, need to have more room on the table, because, it's a continuous process, right? And a Dr. Gautam cannot be coming every third day, right, to teach people. I mean, you can do that, but I think somebody needs to carry the torch. And I think the one problem is that how the human resources are and whether they have a seat on the table or no. That's what I sometimes.
Let me see. You have now touched upon a raw nerve, and we could talk for 3 hours on this topic, because I do a lot of keynotes and speaking to HR professionals, and I tell them, I said, the things that I'm talking to you about your leaders, to me, they are HR issues. But I could be working in a company for 3 years and not end up meeting the HR people at all. Like, where are you? So yes, part of it is the seat at the table, but I think the opportunity of the pandemic is not the seat at the table. The opportunity of the pandemic is to build a different table. HR people need to step up and build a different table and invite the rest of the people across to the other side, because the paradigm has shifted. The old table is crumbling. Okay, it no longer can sustain. The dishes on that table are limited. The style and design of that table is archaic. We need to build a new table, and the lead there has to be taken by HR. And I can tell you, with some of my progressive clients that I'm working with, the way HR has stepped up and taken ownership of this process, for the first time, I'm starting to think, wow, I think there are pockets of HR that have seized the opportunity and are running with it. And I also want to speak to this point that you made about, you can't have, a Dr. Gautam going in every 3 days. I actually don't want to go there every 3 days. I think a part of my success in an organization is them needing me less and less. And so a lot of the new programs that I'm designing for my clients are focused on how can we shift your leaders such that they themselves, start thinking and doing in a way that they would have done, if they were sitting in a workshop. And the workshop is the least of my concerns, and no workshop changes the world. And I tell that to my clients, okay? If you think a 2-day training program is going to change anybody, then
Naive. You're being naive.
I would like to sell the Taj Mahal to you, right? It doesn't work like that. It has to be, sustain. More and more clients are going on journeys that are 6 months, 1 year long, where we have multiple check-ins, we have multiple pit stops. I hold huddles with. I was working with a consulting firm. They come to me every other month, and it's an ask me anything. We just get into a room. I don't know what the agenda is. They're going to come in and they're like, here's the issue. This is what we had talked about in our session. Here's where I'm hitting a roadblock. Here's why I am struggling with it. And I want them to be in that room with the authentic conversation around their struggles, their failures. And I'm like, this is a safe space. Let's talk about it. And see, creating that safe space to discuss the struggle, to discuss the failure is important, because a lot of leaders are so busy posturing. They are so afraid to talk about things that they are struggling with because they believe they should have the answers. No, the age of the heroic leader who would swoop in like Superman and save the world, those days are done. Those days are done. Nobody, including myself, has the answer. The answer has got to be co-created. And that requires you to leave your ego out of the room. That requires you to show up in authenticity. And that requires you to say, with a sense of humility, I don't know what to do. I'm struggling.
So I think that on the risk of being repetitive, I come back. So what does a leader look like to you? A great leader looks like to you. Let's talk about. I know. I mean, we don't have. we can. What is the hard skill? What are the soft skill? Let me put it like that.
Yeah. Hard skills, I suppose, would be industry specific, right?
Yeah.
It depends on who you're talking to, what industry, what's the role. I don't like the word soft skills.
Okay.
I think it just already denotes a certain connotation, which is not true. I mean, I've heard some people say soft skills are the hard skills. So I agree with that.
No, I think I just wanted to be as simple, as naive as possible. I agree. I mean,
yeah. So I think that for the first thing that you really need for a leader today is to have the mindset of experimentation.
Okay.
At any given point in time, you need to be running a series of experiments in your organization, because to the point that we were talking about the future, when we don't know where the future is, you will have to spread your bets. You know this about investing more than I do.
Yeah.
Right? You have to spread your bets.
Diversify.
Diversify your portfolio of investment in different aspects. And the experimentation mindset has just not existed, because we like to pretend we know where they are going and we will get there. And, that doesn't factor in for contingencies like the pandemic or, shift in ground realities, etc. So the experimental mindset is very, very key. I mean, if you think about even the vaccines that came out during the pandemic, the companies that were first to market had been experimenting with the RNA variations for way before the pandemic ever hit. Now, somebody could have asked them, why are you investing in this? What is the purpose of this? The purpose of this is we are building capacity, because we don't know. That's the term future fluidity that I use. We don't know what we will arrive at. So we have to expand our capability. So think experimentation mindset is definitely key. Second is co-creation. I think people don't know how to co-create. Co-creation is different from collaboration. It's different from teamwork. Co-creation requires us to be immersed in the context of another. Think of synergies between what they're doing, what we're doing. It's, people think collaboration is like cross-selling. We cross-sell each other or our products. That's not it. Co-creation requires us to not just think about our goals and our metrics of success, but their goals and their metrics of success. And what is a higher goal and higher metric of success if we could harness the synergies on both sides? So learn to experiment, learn to co-create. And third, most of all, I feel leaders need to have the humility to accept that A, they don't know all the answers and they need to ask for help when it is needed. I do a lot of executive coaching, and that's exactly what that is about. The stories that I hear behind closed doors. They don't want to go out there and ask for help because they'll be perceived in a particular way. And the willingness to be wrong. So yeah, I thought I was going there, but that scenario has changed and I'm okay being good. So the inner work of leadership, experimentation, co-creation, inner work of leadership. If you can give me a leader who can do all three, I'd just like to clone him or her 1,000 times and we will solve the world's problems.
Yeah, look, I do market research. There are questions on scale, right? On a scale of 1 to 5, where you rate it. I might rate somebody at 3 and we might rate somebody at 2. So I'm not sure whether any exact person could exist for you and me. It's going to be. Now, I think I asked a couple of more questions before we close. One, tell me who you look up to there. We talked about this before, right? In our exploratory call. And these three characteristics you talked about, leave aside the industry expertise, different. And we have seen that what has happened when we go up this right side, which you don't call soft skills. I don't know what to call it actually, besides soft skills. Who is somebody comes near to that, who you say, oh, this is the person, comes close to that, or this is first, this is second, this is third?
Yeah, well, there are different leaders I admire for different things. So in the corporate world, one of the leaders I admire, and I've had the chance to meet her and learn from her as well, in some time we spent together, is actually Lina Nair.
Oh, okay. She's
Right now,
ex-Unilever.
she's ex-Unilever. She was the first South Asian woman to be on the board of Unilever, and now she is the CEO of Chanel.
Yeah.
The reason why I admire her, because she always brought her full self to the table, right? Lina was comfortable talking about digital transformation as she was comfortable about doing an impromptu Bollywood dance with the room, wherever she might have been, and owning that part of herself and bringing it to work. And those are the kind of leaders we're looking for, the ones who bring their complete selves to work. And the fact that she shifted from an HR role to a hardcore business role is exactly what I meant when I said HR should not be invited to the table. HR needs to build a new table for itself. Yeah. So she, for a variety of reasons, is somebody who I admire. I think some of your listeners may be familiar with Brené Brown. She's, again, somebody who I did have a chance to meet. She is a world famous professor, and she does leadership development work as well. And what I like about her is that she combines research with storytelling in a way that makes the most complex ideas also accessible, and that's what leaders need to do. And that's what we do in storytelling workshops for influence and engagement, and that's why they are so loud, is how do you be credible messengers of what you're trying to talk about? Because you see, in change management, if you can't take your perspective and put it forward in a compelling manner that others can engage with, then you're not going to get the buy-in and support. So Brené Brown is the second one. And the third one that I really admire, actually, who I haven't met, at least not yet, is Barack Obama.
Okay.
And I find he has a certain humility about himself. He's always very balanced in his perspective, and he's human with a sense of humor. So there are aspects of these different leaders that, for me, that's what I look up to.
It's amazing. I am so glad that you didn't say Michelle Obama, because then I would have said, "Oh, Tanvi, all three ladies, no men. Where is diversity here?"
Yes, I had to be careful about that. I was like, okay, if I think they will say, okay, you only have women, although they never ask when they have only men. So I suppose it should be all right. But yes, we are balanced, and gender wise and culture wise and functional wise, and there's all sorts of diversity in my board of admired leaders, if I may say.
Okay, I think that brings me, I think, two more questions, and I think storytelling, I just want to touch, and then I'll go to my last question. Storytelling. Okay, so born in India in a system, I read like write a story on cow. So I'm just giving you very raw examples, Dr. Tan, we don't get, and then write a story on prime minister. I used to write a story on prime minister. And essays we call it. Now, but the storytelling, what you are telling, is far more complex and far more deeper implications on the corporate. It can change the narrative. It can change. Talk a little bit about it. What significance you see the storytelling can bring? What storytelling is exactly according to you, and what it brings on table?
Yeah, I think storytelling for me is it's a technology.
Okay.
Right? You have got C++ and Java and all that. Storytelling is a type of a technology.
Okay.
And what that technology can do for you is that once you have learned to code in storytelling, your ideas coded in storytelling can have a huge amount of impact. I tell people that storytelling is one of the highest return on investment activities you will ever undertake in your career. And because you can code so many different things, you can use storytelling for change management, you can use it for influence and engagement, you can use it for coaching and leadership development. Unless a building is on fire, and then you don't want to start talking about the Great Fire of London and all of that, you need to kind of get to the point. The applications of storytelling are endless, but you have to understand how to write that code. And that's what we do in the storytelling program. Once you've learned to write the code, you design what you want to design, right? But at least understand the fundamentals of what makes storytelling so powerful. And there is research on neurobiology, there's research on body chemistry, there is research on execution, that shows that it is one of the most powerful pieces of technology available to us if we want to translate vision and ideas into action and execution. It's that missing piece.
Yeah. I think this is one of the most brilliant definition I've heard, and I'm not trying to flatter you here. I mean, I never said, nobody said that storytelling is a technology, and I kind of think it is, because I do these presentations to C-level quite often, and I'm looking for what storytelling is, and I think this changes, this brings some shift in my head, that how central can it be, because you think it's a technology, that's why it can be so central to an organization. It can be part of the change they want to create, and it's amazing thing. Yeah, it's brilliant. I think last question before I end, Dr. Tanvi, we talked about women leadership, women in leader, and I heard about your story. You wanted to fly a fighter jet or something, right? But India didn't, or the country, whichever, probably it was India, right, didn't have women fighter, but it was, and they missed you, and we got you in the civil world. So that's a positive. Well, what's the lesson? I have a 16-year-old daughter, and she is pretty much chauvinist, about, she's very proud to be a woman, which is great. What's your advice to these female leaders coming in, or a daughter, my daughter, think of her, and what advice do you want to give her?
I think the first thing I would say is define success on your own terms. Right? Others can have an opinion, but you have a life. And I think that the access to role models for young women entering the workforce is so important, because it's that famous saying, you have to see it to be it. So my suggestion would be for her to be speaking and interacting with more women leaders, so she comes up with her own definition of success, because the corporate world's definition of success is very narrow. It is looking for that worker who's all consumed and fully dedicated to the workplace without taking into account life circumstances, health, everything else. It's about rising through the ranks. No, there are many different definitions of success, but what is your definition of success? That would be the first thing I would advise her to. Second, let's be realistic. The system that you're entering, it does have biases. It is a system that will take its own time to evolve. I mean, the reason why I do work with women executives is someone said it's going to take 200 years before we get, pay equity in the workplace. I'm like, I don't have 200 years. I'm worst comes to worst, I'm gone tomorrow morning. On an average, maybe I've got another 30 years. I don't have 200 years. And so when I work with women leaders, I always tell them, I said, you have to be so good that they can't ignore you. And that requires you to stay one step ahead. It's like they say, don't just, in ice hockey, you have the puck, right? Just like you have the ball in football, the ice hockey, you have the puck. The saying is, don't just look at where the puck is, but anticipate where the puck is going. And the way to stand out from the crowd is not just to do your job, but to be strategic about where your career is going next, where your team's direction should go next, where the organization could go next. We really need leaders who can be strategic and forward thinking and show agency in their own career, right? So define success on your own terms, have agency in everything that you do, stay one step ahead of the crowd. And finally, don't let anyone tell you that biology is destiny. It's not. You have to learn to live life on your own terms.
Well, I think that's amazing, Dr. Tanvi. I think I appreciate your tips, your guidance. I've learned quite a bit, and my daughter will appreciate. But I can tell you for one thing, my daughter is definitely one step ahead of her mother. So, so whenever his mother is planning something, she knows that something is coming and she takes action. I hope she lives the same thing in the real world. On that note, I want to thank you, Dr. Tanvi, and I mean, I can go on hours with you. You're such an interesting person, and what a conversation. Thank you so much. I wish you all the best. And